So we're two huge Rush fans. We've got tickets to see the band for the first time live next year. In the lead up, we're doing this series called Road to Rush, where we listen to and review every single Rush album, one per week, and share our thoughts. This week, it was the term of the band's 1993 studio album, Counterparts. What did you think?
If you were to ask sort of myself if this was the time to panic, I would say that.
Well, just before the camera started rolling, you said, what did you say about the album? You said something like, this is the Rush album where the cover is as bad as the music. Or
no, the album cover's better than the album.
Yeah.
But no, that was very, very off-camera rude of me.
Yeah.
No, I did have an understanding, and again, this is where I had to refer back to what was happening at the time.
Yeah.
When it kicks in, and the sound is huge.
Yeah.
The drums are the most produced drums I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
But I didn't this time round.
I thought this one was fantastic. It's almost like they were listening to my criticisms in the last video about the last few albums being a bit boring and being a bit too long, being a bit too predictable, a bit too upbeat, a bit too this and a bit too that, and not having that raw struggle. It seems like we were back at the raw struggle with this album.
Give me an example.
It was heavy. It was
yes,
heavy
it was.
As fuck. It was the heaviest Rush album ever. Animate kicked in. And he was doing all these rhymes, which, let's be honest, were a little bit rubbish. Animate me,
they always have a bit of it.
Animate me, cremate me, all these other whatever they were saying. And I was a bit like, oh yeah, we're going to be in front of the 40 minutes of synths and another bit of a snooze fest here. And then Stick It Out kicks in the second track with the dirtiest riff and all these like old time signatures. Like this is the era of Dream Theater. Like this is Rush's response, I think, to Dream Theater and Tool. You know, these were all the bands that were just sort of starting at this point, that they were listening to and taking influence from, of course, Metallica and stuff.
Extreme. A lot of extreme in there.
100%. But it was like, wow, this feels really, even though it's the 90s, it feels really new for Rush. It feels like they really were pushing boundaries.
The last album we had, obviously, I think it was very 90s. It was 1991.
Yeah.
This is 93.
Yeah.
A lot happened in the 90s technological wise.
Yeah.
You've got Ugly Kid Joe kicking in. You've got these bands that say, we don't want to be sleaze. We don't just want to be glam. We want to be it all. You've got Mr. Bungle. From Faith No More and all that sort of stuff, where they're not just glam rock tracks anymore, they are things. But I just found the drums just drove.
There's a few points where the snare triggers and there's not a snare being played. I noticed that the triggers are at the wrong moments. But that was really charming for me because it reminded me that it was the 90s. You know, they were pushing the boundaries with this technology that wasn't quite there yet like it is today. True. You know, in terms of doing what they did to get those drums to sound that way was really hard back then. And I respected what they were doing. Like I said to you though, as I was going through the album, Nobody's Hero kicked in and the lyrics started, I thought, fuck is this? What was the message of that song? Honestly, like what was he trying to say with that? Just looking at the track listing now, there's so many bangers. Alien Shore was fantastic. I thought it just drove. It just had this groove to it. The Speed of Love was the most annoying and repetitive Rush song I have ever heard. It seemed like there was 2 minutes at the end where he just kept saying the speed of love, the speed of love. And at that point, I was thinking, okay, it's had its day. And then Double Agent kicked in. I think it's an underappreciated Rush classic. It just had the way it started with just the bass and the vocals. This is heavy. This is different. We're in the zone.
There was just a uniformity formula, if you will, with this album where it seemed to be that like the song would start generally with drums and bass, whatever, and then by the time the sort of verse kicked in, it was just another layer on top rather than it changing to another riff or another section. It was just sort of a bit of a more triangle, incline and decline of dynamics. Rather than obscure sort of structures or so. And this is where the early 90s new metal pop was coming in. And they wanted to get into that market, but they do sound more mature. I think, and after sort of hearing I need to have another go. I think I've listened to it.
I thought this one was fantastic. I really
surprised.
enjoyed it.
After the last one, I'm surprised.
This one was my favourite for quite a few albums. Genuinely. Leave That Thing Alone. We Are Back.
I've heard that one before.
Yeah, We Are Back at fantastic instrumentals. There was some great contrast in this one, the kind of Eastern sounding modes and then some nice little pop bits, and there was some fantastic odd time in there. There was one like driving bit in there with his double time take. I thought Terry Bozzio's just walked in and they're just playing the only thing she needs for a bit. He was doing that same snare groove that he does in that where the verse is building up, and I thought This is really good. I wasn't too keen on the closer. Again, when you've
We
said about
think
a
the
few
closers
albums,
have all been diminishing.
since the 80s, you know, we had the fantastic closers, you know, on Moving Pictures and Signals, but since then, the closer has just not been as fire as some of the previous albums.
It seems to be about the start now.
Yeah. You know, the early albums, 2112, Farewell to Kings, you know, even Fly By Night, they made an effort to have a closer, didn't they? You know, an epic song to finish the album.
One side.
And now it's just exactly. And now it's just kind of okay, let's just sling a pop song at the end with the fade out, and that doesn't feel like Rush to me.
That was Vital Signs.
I guess. But you know what I mean, though. We want that big bombastic ending. You know, we want that prog ending. But this one did really well. It got to #2 in the United States. It's like the band's second highest charting album in America. And I was like, I can kind of see why. But the only thing is, as well, is like these guys were a lot older at this point than, you know, I'm going to name drop Nirvana, Pearl Jam. They were all in the 20s and Rush are like approaching the 40s. It doesn't quite work when Geddy Lee's like, shut up, Mom, I can do whatever I want.
They took advantage of their market as an album releasing band. Yeah. And all those bands were there going, yeah, they were people we listened to. You know, and so it's like influences joining at the same time to release something.
But it's one of those, like you say, at the time a bunch of people will have been name dropping Rush. You know, like for example Dream Theater, Mike Portnoy will have been doing interviews and saying, oh, Neil Peart's amazing, and then kids who never heard of him will have just bought this album because it was new. And so that's probably why it did so well as well, because other people, they got lip service from people who, I suppose this is like the first time we've got where, say, if you were 10 when something like Farewell to Kings came out, now you'd be in your mid to late 20s and you're old enough to be in your own band that's successful and popular. So I guess we've got that element thrown in there as well. Yeah, I love this one. I hate the cover. I hate the sleeve.
I like the cover.
Really?
Because obviously I'm a mechanic, engineerly minded. I don't like how on the internet album covers move.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Do you know what made me laugh with this one though? Like, they were so busy working on the album that they were probably like, the record company phoned up and were like, oh yeah, we've got the master tapes, where's the cover? And they were probably like, oh shit. And then Neil Peart probably had a manual for one of his bikes hanging by, and there was just one of those diagrams of a nut and a bolt, and he was like, Geddy, write Rush on the top, and they just sent that in to be photocopied, and they're like, yeah, fantastic guys, this is brilliant. What are you giving Counterparts out of 10?
Besides the fact, I'll start with, I am going to have another go.
Okay.
After your gushing.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
You know, I was in the realm of a 7.
Yeah.
And it was primarily because the whole album just did that. Yeah. Each track did that all the way through. It didn't have like a big climax in the middle, and you know, the prog had been lost at this time.
Oh, 100%. The instrumental was just them screaming, bleeding the prog for that one song. It was like the producer, Kevin Shirley, was like, right guys,
you got your chance.
He was like, right, it's like the kid thing, if you do all these pop songs, you can have one prog song on the album, and then they just made the best instrumental that they'd done. I'm giving it a 7.5. I'm only docking it from being an 8 because it was 54 minutes long and it could have done with being 5 minutes shorter. We will be back next week for 1996's Test for Echo.